Hello and welcome to our first installment of a Q&A session with Illinois DNR wildlife staff. First of all, today we have Jared Duquette. Jared's going to briefly introduce himself and his program.
Yeah, hey, as Dan said, Jared Duquette. I am the Wildlife and Hunter Heritage Program Manager for DNR in the Wildlife Division. Been with DNR for about almost 2.5 years now, and really enjoy it. Work with a lot of great people, and especially working on wildlife conservation, doing a lot of different things, but especially working on hunting. And the reason for that mainly is kind of threefold. One, we want to get people outside doing outdoor activities and things. We have a rich hunting heritage here in Illinois and across the United States. The other reason a lot of people maybe are familiar with, maybe not, is the Pittman-Robertson Act and how that helps generate a lot of funding that we rely on as a state and really as a country to promote wildlife conservation. The other angle with this too, we really like, is that hunting allows people to procure their own sustainable food. Wildlife are regulated to have sustainable, healthy populations, and that's a part of our job as an agency to do that. And your job as hunters is to allow us to do that, one, through funding, but also getting out there and actually hunting and help us manage populations so species like deer don't become too overabundant.
Perfect. Thanks, Jared. Jason's going to ask our first question and we will get started.
Sure. One hurdle that hunters have here in Illinois is getting access to land. So our first question we have is from Sean, and he was wondering, what is DNR doing right now to expand hunter access?
Yeah, so we've known for decades, and this access isn't an issue that's unique to Illinois by any means. I mean, it's a ubiquitous problem, even internationally.
Sure.
And so, you know, in Illinois, we have about 3% public lands for people. And we're seeing a trend in society where younger generations they don't have the money to afford land, or a lot of them live in metropolitan areas. And so they have to drive pretty far to get to a lot of public lands. And so, you know, part of our job as an agency is to allow that and get more people out recreating, not only for hunting, but things like hiking and such. And so we are actively working on procuring more land and for hunting and recreation in general. We have some initiatives in place. My program in particular, Hunter Heritage Program, is really what we're looking at is trying to map this out and look at where do we have a lot of demand from hunters, where are we going to see it in the future, and try to match that up and give the agency actual maps to say, here's where we can try to buy land, or where you can at least consider buying land to help get more access for hunters, particularly close to where we're going to see the most demand in the future. So that's a big initiative of ours. And not only just land in general, but what do people most want to hunt? Do they want to hunt deer? Do they want access to more small game hunting, like for squirrels? We know small game hunting is a great way for new hunters to learn how to hunt and do it ethically and safely. And so just having more land, or maybe opening more opportunities at existing spots for things like squirrels or rabbits, is a great way for us to help promote hunting.
Excellent. We'll move on to the next question. This question comes from Maria, and she asks, are the Spanish regulations published, or is it just an electronic copy that is available?
Yeah, for the past few years, the digest has been printed. I think we printed 500 copies, and mainly those were distributed by our distribution center into areas where we know most Spanish speakers live in the state.
Sure.
And so we don't have a real good handle on necessarily, maybe we need more copies of that, maybe we need less, probably more. That would be great. Last year we ran into a budget snafu where we just couldn't get those printed. And so this year we do anticipate trying to get those out. And what I'm really trying to focus on, since being in DNR, is where not only do we need to get Spanish digest to serve the people that want them, but just the hunting digest in general. We know some areas we have less hunters, some areas more, and so we want to distribute those digests in areas where they're going to be most used. And so we're starting to look at that and look at where's our cost benefit of trying to get those into the hunters' hands and not only where, but and do it in a timely manner as well.
Excellent.
Great. Next question is from Timothy, and he says, the hunter fact sheet maps are hard to visualize borders and locations. Are there any plans to update the hunter fact sheet maps?
Yes, I completely agree. And myself, I've run into a lot of those. I mean, some of these maps are hand drawn from decades ago. And so, yeah, that makes it very frustrating, or there's no scale on them. And I will say, even before discussing maps, we're working on actually a brand new hunting website that will roll out. Hopefully, we anticipate in like late summer this year. And not only will we have a nice digital map where you can click on this particular site and it will show you where you can deer hunt versus turkey hunt and where the boat ramps and blinds and things are. We'll have that tool, but this website will be very comprehensive and give you a lot of great digital tools beyond mapping. I'm not going to say more than that, but I think our hunters are really going to like it, and especially the map.
Awesome.
That's great. Just a quick follow-up. Is there a time frame on the, I guess, publishing of that website?
Yeah, like I said a second ago, I think we're shooting for kind of late summer. Sure. We're trying to work out with the IT folks some of the quirks and make sure it's bug-free and has the things that we want for hunters. And we think that hunters do want. And I've talked to a lot of our constituents and constituent groups that are going to review this and say, okay, here's some other things we could put in there. And so we're trying to do with our budget, we're trying to do as much as we can right now. And over the next few years is building on that, and talking to our hunters, what do you guys want? Not only our existing hunters, but maybe what are some of our new hunters want that maybe we don't realize. And so we need to ask those questions.
Excellent. We'll move on to the next question. This question comes from Scott. Scott asks, even before the stay-at-home orders, it is often difficult to find in-class hunter education courses. If Illinois DNR is focused on recruiting more hunters, will we see an expansion of hunter ed course offerings?
Yeah, I don't, personally, my program doesn't oversee our hunter education courses. That actually falls in the law enforcement division. And so I do believe having those conversations, cursory conversations anyway, I do believe that, they want to increase the number of those courses. And we're kind of looking at, once again, kind of like the digest is, where do we need to serve our constituents the best? So where do we need to spend our time putting these courses? One of the things we've seen too in the past, I don't know, it's 5 to 10 years, is more and more people are taking the online version. So there's actually 3 different types of hunter safety courses you can take. One is the traditional 2-day. Then you can take a hybrid of doing online plus 1 day in the field. And then you can also have an option, if you're old enough, if you're an adult, you can take the online course. And so that's all online. You can get your certificate that way. And we're seeing more people do that. And so it's a matter of how do you best serve people and what do they actually want. And we're looking at that. The other limitation that we especially have is not many people are signing up to be hunter safety instructors. So a lot of our instructors, they're getting older. They're senescing out of being instructors. And so we're losing instructors. And so therefore we can't teach as many classes.
Sure.
So if you care about hunting, if you want to see more kids out there hunting or more adults, whatever, definitely sign up to be a hunter safety instructor. Go on the DNR website. You can search hunter safety and it has a link right on there where you can sign up to be an instructor.
Perfect.
Follow-up question to that. Is there a training or a test, or what happens after you sign up to become a safety instructor for people who are actually interested?
Yeah, I know kind of a cursory kind of background with this. I know they do have, once you sign up, they give you study materials, and then you have to basically kind of job shadow a person that is a hunter and safety instructor. I believe 5 classes is the current way they do it. And then they kind of turn you out on your own, get you the equipment to do it, like the kind of the fake firearms and things that you would teach, the various calls and things to be able to educate people. So if you want to know more, I know they're looking at kind of redesigning this, trying to bring hunter safety up into 2020 essentially, and best serve what people want.
Great. So next question. So Carlos, he's hanging out west, and in those states they do post the lottery odds for the different tags and zones, and he says that that's pretty integral to planning their hunting season. So he was wondering if Illinois has any plans on releasing the odds for the lotteries.
Yeah, so this is one of the things we actually get quite a few questions on, especially we're seeing some of our younger hunters that do go out west a lot, and they're playing the drawing odds for their elk tag or their mule deer tag and things. And so Illinois is kind of set up the same way. We have a lot of lottery systems for deer and for turkey and things. And so we do want to see, people have that information and be able to play that. And that's one of the things we do anticipate building into the new hunting website, is a queryable table, like say the state of Idaho has a good one, or South Dakota, and you can look at that by their units. And here in Illinois, we would have it like at the site level, basically, or at the county level. So we are exploring that. We're trying to, think very contemporarily. And so, hold tight, and we're working on it for you.
Excellent. Our next question comes from Colby. Colby asks, will DNR ever expand shooting ranges at DNR sites? A quick follow-up question. He also asks, is there plans to revamp some of the existing shooting ranges at a lot of these sites?
Yeah, so this is a big one that really goes back to how do we maintain Pittman-Robertson funds as well. So those who are familiar with that act, a lot of that money, that tax revenue from Pittman-Robertson that's going to wildlife conservation actually comes from recreational shooters, people that they may hunt, but maybe they're just target shooters. And so we also need to accommodate them if we need to sustain funding for wildlife conservation. And also have ranges set up for hunters. So a lot of our sites, you can't sight in a shotgun with a slug, for example, or shoot a turkey load. You might be able to shoot trap or shoot archery, and we know that. And so that's one of the things, we're trying to work on, as much as access to hunting land. We're trying to look at right now, where is most demand for target shooting ranges, what type of ranges, where do our archery hunters mostly come from, where are our shotgun hunters? And so how do we build these ranges in areas that, one, will get used, but the other thing we have to consider too with this is, one, they're pretty expensive to implement. I mean, you're talking millions of dollars in some cases to build a new range. We have to abide by federal regulations, county, local regulations. And with a range, it's not as easy as putting a dirt pile out there. We have to consider all this, plus the insurance and staffing on top of it to maintain a range, which can amount to another thousands and thousands of dollars on top of just the construction. So yeah, we are looking into building new ranges. There is a new federal act out that can hopefully get us some funds to do that. And we're exploring that option. But first we want to look at, where do we actually build these things? And doing our Office of Lands, our lands division, is looking at, they oversee the ranges. And so at the sites, and they're looking at, what do we have, kind of taking an inventory and looking at, what do we allow? Can we improve ranges where we're at, get new targets out there? Can we set them up in a way that people could go sight in a shotgun with a slug? So we're very cognizant of this. It's going to take some time to do this, because there's so many levels to shooting ranges.
Sure. Excellent.
Okay, next question is from Ashley. She was wondering why each site tends to have different regulations to each different site, and what's the pros and cons of that, and why, not really why, but are there any chance of there being a uniform regulation across the different public lands in Illinois?
Yeah, this is a very, very common question. Maybe not exactly stated this way all the time, but why do site regulations vary among sites? And there's several reasons for it. The first one you can kind of think about as a biological reason, being not animals, like especially like deer or turkeys and things, they're not all at the same population abundance or density across the state. That varies. And so we have to, one, set regulations that meet what is good for the wildlife population. And so, you know, a turkey population may be different at a site in southern Illinois versus a site close to Chicago. And so that's going to factor into what the regulation is at the site. One of the other factors in that too is you have the site each have a site superintendent that oversees one or more sites. A lot of them oversee multiple sites. And those people come and go just like any of our staff do. And so for decades, the site superintendents, you know, maybe want to have this type of hunting there, or they allow this type of hunting. And then you have different biologists weighing in on that too. And so over time, you kind of have regulations change. And so, you know, as personnel change, those regulations can differ over time too. And so you kind of have this human factor, this sociological factor that comes into it. But beyond that, you have things like federal regulations change, local municipality regulations change over time. The environment changes over time. And so we have to, you know, adapt to those things. And so you have biological, you have environmental, and as well as sociological factors that all play into the variation in these regulations. And I get that as frustrating. And, you know, you can go to some states and it's like, oh, it's just, you can hunt turkeys anywhere in the state with any tag. And here in Illinois, you know, that's a tough thing to do because we don't have a ton of public land. And so with that too, you know, you have these very disjunct areas, these sites. And so we have to be able to maintain and kind of oversee these things and oversee wildlife populations and people, and how hunter demand varies at sites, you know, based on how many hunters are coming, what the populations of wildlife are doing. And so that's just how it has to be. And over time, you know, we're on my program especially is looking at that from the hunter side. How do we make it easier for people to understand? Because if folks don't understand, they may give up or never start hunting in the first place, or that risk, you know, potentially getting in violation because they didn't understand the regulation in the first place. So we want to be able to mitigate those limitations for people and, you know, get people out hunting and keep them hunting.
Great. I do have a quick follow-up question to that. It sounds like this new Hunt Illinois website that you guys are looking to develop, is that going to house a lot of these site-specific regulations, or are they still going to be separate on the DNR's website?
Yeah, so what we've done is take the hunter fact sheets for people that are familiar with those. Those are currently on the DNR website. Many people are probably familiar with those, and the laundry list of footnotes that often come with them. And so what we've done with the new website is to create basically a new type of hunter fact sheet, if you will. It's a hunter web page for each site. Each site will have its own page, and it will be very user friendly. And so with that, we've cleaned it up to where you can look at a specific species, and it's divided up just like the hunting digest is into sections. Same colors, everything, and so very easy to follow. And so we have this kind of consistent theme going throughout there. And we have photos of the site going into there. We have contact information for people, for the site, for the biologists. And that's all I'm going to tell you. I'm just going to leave you with a little teaser there. And your people are going to like it, I think.
Yeah, I'm excited. It sounds great, and I look forward to hopefully using it before next season. Our next question comes from Jackie. Jackie asks, my husband and I would like to take an IDNR wing shooting clinic together, but unfortunately, the wing shooting clinics are for women and youth only. Are there wing shooting clinics that we could both take together?
Yeah, absolutely. So currently what you have the youth and kind of women classic wing shooting clinics, but they also offer what they call like the hunter clinics, which are set up. Anybody can take those, but kind of as the name implies, they kind of teach you hunting scenarios using like clay targets. So they may throw in like a dove, they may roll in like a rabbit, that kind of thing. And so with those types of clinics, anybody can take those. Now, if you just want to go out and shoot in a wing shooting clinic, just go shoot targets, they don't really offer that for men and women. If you email the instructor, you may be able to get you know, a husband and wife team in there. I don't think they're going to turn anybody away. I would hope, but my program doesn't personally oversee that. That falls within the lands division. And so with that, I think once again, you have some people that are kind of looking at how do we make this a contemporary program for folks, and what types of people want to go out and shoot. And so we kind of think about an adult male as being your stereotypical hunter, and we're seeing more and more that a lot of adult males don't hunt, or they've never hunted, or they've never shot a gun or shot trap before. And so we want to be able to offer classes for those folks as well. That's kind of a demographic actually being overlooked a lot of times. Or we want to be able to have families or couples or parents and kids show up. And so that's something I know is on the radar of the lands division and the folks that run the wing shooting clinic.
Perfect.
Okay, Ralph had a question. He was wondering, since the Hunting and Trapping Digest is a summary of the wildlife code, where can a hunter find the full wildlife code?
Yeah, absolutely. And what I'm going to do is actually share the website where you can find this real quick. Okay, so yeah, if you were to go to your favorite browser search, for example, I use Google, probably like a lot of people, and you type in Illinois Wildlife Code, what you're going to do is be able to get to this page here, the Illinois General Assembly. And so with this has all of the exhaustive wildlife code. If you want to find specifically what you're looking for and how that plays into the digest. So what I would recommend, if you do go here, obviously this thing is massive, and I need to know all of this for my program. So it's it's quite challenging. And so with this, what you could do is say go to your find button and type in deer. And you could do a keyword search here if you're looking for something specific in the wildlife code too. That'll help speed up your process. So little tip for folks. The other thing you could do is some of our regulations in the Illinois administrative rules. You could find those here. And so you could go to find the various ad rules, as we call them, and how those play into the digest as well. The difference a little bit between those, the administrative rules have to go through the JCAR process, so the legislative process. The wildlife code, that can be changed anytime. And so a little bit of a kind of a cursory difference between those two things. And so if you are interested in looking at kind of a better full explanation of something that's in the digest, you may want to go to the code. And if you want to look at maybe something at the site specific level, you would go to the administrative rules there and look those up.
What is the big distinction between the wildlife code and essentially the digest? Is the language fairly similar between the two?
Yeah, absolutely. And what we've tried to do, especially I've taken over, when I started with DNR, I took over the development of the hunting digest. And so with that, we try to take this very complex legalese kind of language and try to distill it down into something that's fairly short that can fit into, a digest. And the digest is long as it is. So if we were to take everything verbatim out of the wildlife code and administrative rules, that thing would look like a phone book. And so what we're trying to do over time is try to take that legalese from the code and the ad rules and try to distill it down in layman's language that people can better understand. And also that shortens up the digest too. And so some of it is maybe repeated from other sections or, just is very hard to understand. And so we're trying to do this, and it takes time to be able to do that. With all the other duties that we have, but we're slowly picking away at it, and we have a decent team of folks working on that now here to improve that.
Excellent. Our next question comes from Scott. You kind of touched on it a little bit just a second ago, but are administrative rules required to go through the state legislature before being implemented?
Yeah, so what I'm going to do is share this screen. You should be able to see here how rules are made in Illinois.
Yep.
And so with this process, yes, administrative rules have to go through the JCAR process, the Joint Committee on Administrative Rules, JCAR. And so with this process, we have a split of the two parties making up the legislation. And so with the administrative rules, these may get proposed by a policymaker. They may get proposed from an external organization, maybe internal in DNR. And so with this, the proposed rule would go through this legislative process. There's several steps. Two of them, one of them being what they call first notice. This is kind of the first look that you can have public comments and things on. And so after that, things get incorporated, modified, whatever, then it goes to second notice. This is kind of the final process where everything gets locked in, and then it would go and get approved or potentially not. So through this process, the administrative rules are very, very scrutinized over time. And so because it takes generally 9 months, even sometimes a little more than a year to do this, if we want to change anything that may be good for hunters, we're going to want to work with our partners. We're going to want to start this process at least a year out to be able to get this even into the legislation's eyes. So hopefully that answers the question a little bit on this. If you want to know more, you can easily find this document here. Once again, if you browser search JCAR administrative rule process, there's several ways you can look at it online here.
So our next question, Jared, I know you've personally taken out a lot of new hunters and kind of mentored them through the hunting process. Is mentorship something that DNR considers an important piece of the hunter recruitment, retention, and re-engagement puzzle?
Yeah, absolutely. Mentorship is a huge part of the puzzle. A lot of our survey data, including from the Learn to Hunt program, is showing, that's a big step. We can, show people the equipment and kind of, what to do and things, but unless you have somebody to kind of really take you out there, hunting is kind of a tough thing to do. And also just having somebody out there to maybe make you feel a little bit more safe, somebody to talk with. Like companionship is really nice when you're out hunting. It makes the dragging a deer out one pretty easy, but also just somebody to talk to, or maybe another set of eyes to watch for you. So yeah, what we're seeing, especially a lot of our new hunters, are really looking for somebody to help them out. The limitation that we run into is hunters, especially your new hunters, want somebody they can relate to. And so having that conversation that's fluid and maybe some at a period in your life where you can relate to somebody else that's kind of in the same period, or some of the same interests maybe outside of hunting. And so that's the tough part about this, is kind of matching people up with people that best suit them. And so DNR, yes, we're taking a very strong look at this and looking at how do you formalize this process a little bit more. One of the things from a state agency that we run into with this is kind of the liability that you have associated with it. So if we were to implement this as an agency, we can't physically be out there with our staff. We don't have enough staff to do this, to take thousands of people out. So we rely on volunteers to be able to do this, and we can't be out in the field to police those folks and know how good of a quality that they have, what type of person that they actually are. We could set something up to where maybe we create some type of match service that kind of matches people up. But I know some of our NGO partners are looking into this and trying to formalize this process. And that's a good way for them to get the membership as well, and get this worked out in collaboration with DNR. And we're definitely looking hard at mentoring and how do we really create a sinuous process, not only for the agency and our hunters, but also working with our partner NGOs.
Excellent. I've got one more question. We'll kind of end it on a lighter note. You've discussed your website fairly in depth. Do you have any other projects, either internal within DNR or specific to your program, that you're really excited about and want to kind of share a couple snippets about?
Yeah, well, I guess, I'm talking to some of the folks I'm really excited about with the Learn to Hunt program. And so, with this, with that program, yeah, I mean, they've done a great job, not only adapting with COVID-19 limitations, like doing these great webinars now, but also, serving folks that, like adults that they've kind of been overlooked for a while. And so one of the things I'm really excited about is not only serving kind of demographics that have been overlooked, but also then starting to work and blend existing programs, youth programs, mentor programs, and starting to build all these things into one kind of sinuous system process that whether you're a female in Chicago or you're a youth in Southern Illinois, whatever you are, wherever you live, whatever type of person or interest that you have, we're going to have a system for you. And I think we're starting to get there over time, and we're starting to be able to hire people back in the agency and things. And so, it's just going to take a little bit of time, but we're getting there. We're working very hard in creating contemporary tools like the new hunting website. Some of the things that we're looking at too, like I said, is getting more of the shooting ranges out there, trying to get people excited about that, shooting year round to be able to make sure they're going to make that ethical shot when it comes hunting season. So we have lots of irons in the fire, my program especially, and we have some really great staff working on some really contemporary programs, not only for hunting, but just wildlife management in general, from ducks to deer to turkey to upland game. And so I think in the next few years, you're going to really see some great things coming out of the agency, and especially the wildlife division.
Excellent. Well, we're certainly looking forward to it. That does kind of wrap up our Q&A. So again, we'd like to thank you for joining us. And for those listening at home or watching at home, thank you for spending a few minutes with us. We do have several more question and answer webinars coming up in the next few weeks. So stay tuned to our program website and social media channels so you can get your questions submitted and hopefully answered. So thanks again, Jared, and we look forward to seeing some of these changes implemented.
Absolutely. Everybody stay safe, and hope to see you out in the woods this fall.